Well, hello. Hello and welcome to another edition of Atlas Information Live. I'm your host, Atlas Alex. And today today I'm going to have another frog in my throat, which is probably as good a way as any to start. But today we're going to be what will we be doing? We are going to be exploring what separates us from the growing, expanding, intensifying mechanicity all around us. We're surrounded by it. We're inundated by it. And those are words that were ironically spoken by Smith in The Matrix. I feel saturated by it. I can't get your stink off of me. Well, I very much feel the same way. But the stink that I feel like I can't get off of me is the stink of mechanicity. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to spend time in a 1970s, maybe early 80s industrial relic. By that I mean some sort of metalworks or factory or smelting or somewhere where there was a furnace and a relic of the earlier 20th century industrialization. Of course, it must have been far worse back in the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, where it was all driven by coal. And just imagine the soot. All the men came home completely covered head to toe with coal dust, right? But not just coal dust, but that ash of coal dust, right? Because they were firing kilns and they were firing furnaces and they were because you need energy, you need the fire to be able to work with nature. That's a universal constant. If you want to transform nature, you work with fire. And even if you say, well, what about water? Well, you never forget that there's water in the fire. Pardon me. There is fire in the water. I got that backwards. Because water has energy. And esoterically, we say fire when we need energy because the fires of the Divine Mother, Devi Kundalini Shakti, well, that's four-dimensional energy, as we have direct access to it and that we work with. And of course, that fire is very much related to our sexual waters. But coming back to the initial query, the initial question and proposition, have you ever experienced or had an opportunity to spend time in one of these old relics of 20th century industrialization, where the tremendous heat combined with this overpowering claustrophobic presence of iron and steel and oil? What is most vivid to me in my memories of such places was the smell of oil that was not quite burning, but it was oil that was heated up, whether it was through direct heat or through friction, because of course oil and grease is essential to all machines that function at some sort of a high velocity, high kinetic output, uh, they can't function without oil and grease. And then when you combine the heat, you apply the heat to that oil and grease, you get this smell, this, and then that would combine with the sweat of the men working there, because these places weren't air conditioned. Good God, you can't air condition a metalworks. It's impossible. Just think of all the energy that you're pumping in there to be able to melt steel. Now think of quadrupling that energy to try to air condition the place. Like it makes no sense, right? You'd be at cross purposes. So, and remember that for a good chunk of the Industrial Revolution, going right up into the 70s and 80s, labor was disposable for the most part. So, working conditions, I mean, you signed up for a particular job, you knew what you were getting into, and that's what you got. So forget about everything you know about comfy office jobs or anything like that. This was like hard labor, and this was hard labor in the most inhospitable of environments that you can imagine, working 8-12 hours a day. Although, to be fair, especially in the union shops, uh, 8 hours was pretty much all that anybody could really handle. And that's why the overtime paid so well, that if you did do the overtime, these places were just horrendous enough that that they paid for the extra hours, because I mean, it was no one was under any illusions as to and if you experience that even in some small way, then you may have an inkling, an understanding, a comprehension of Chaplin's film Modern Times, and the speech that he gives at the end of The Great Dictator, which has gone viral on YouTube. It's been posted and reposted countless times. But when he talks about these unnatural men, these machine men, and when you think of the literature of Charles Dickens and the high fantasy of Tolkien and his love of nature and the natural world and the idyllic countryside of England where he grew up, which he modeled the Shire after, right? This idyllic, green, lovely place filled with these lovely people. And just imagine like the horror of industrial London, and then the horrors of the First and Second World Wars, especially the Blitz, of the relentless onslaught of these dive bombing, screeching machines from the sky, the Junker Jews, the Nazi dive bombers that were part of the Blitz. And just imagine someone like a Tolkien with such idyllic and high conceptual values of all that is good and green and in this world, juxtaposed against that relentless, grinding, stifling, life-sucking enterprise of early and mid 20th century industrialization and late 19th century industrialization, again, because we cannot belittle the age of coal and what it was like when everything was coal fired. So yes, coal and steam. If you want to talk about heat, you remember about humidity, and you know how much more unpleasant and it gets when it's humid. So just imagine these smelting operations and these ironworks and so on, um, and they're being fueled with coal, and the coal is driving these gigantic steam engines, which are giving off just unbelievable amounts of humidity to boot. So just imagine what it was like working, 8 hours, 12 hours a day in under those conditions. And the smell, the whole time, there was that smell of that near burning oil and grease pushed all the way to its limits, right? The limits of its viscosity, and it's slowly breaking down. So it's like it is burning, but it's a slow burn, but it gives off that smell. And if you've ever worked on an engine, or if you've ever dripped hot oil on a hot engine, or whatever, like motor oil on a hot engine, and you immediately get that smell coming off of it, right? And so I think back to Agent Smith talking about, I can't get your stink off of me. Well, that's how I felt as a little child, going with my dad to the factory or to the furnace room where he had to burn the garbage of the apartment building where he was a superintendent. And it was like being in hell, right? It was like, I'm a little kid. I'm like 5 years old, and I'm in hell, right? And there's this smell and everything else. And I watched Chaplin with my dad on Sunday. So uh, I watched Modern Times and The Great Dictator, and there was no such thing as smell-o-vision. There's still no such thing as smell-o-vision. But I can't watch Modern Times without smelling those smells. That stink of that unhinged industrialization, that mechanization. And in many ways, I experience the same sort of disgust for where the modern technological world has led us. It is an insult to my very being to be in the presence of someone, having a conversation or sharing a moment, and they interrupt whatever the moment is with this, even if it's to take a photo. Because, I've got to capture it for posterity. I guarantee you they have tens of thousands of photos on a hard drive somewhere. How often do you think they look at those photos? It was so much better when film cost money, and developing pictures was like a little ritual, and it also cost money, but it was like a ritual. And I worked in a camera. When I worked at Kmart, I worked in the camera section. So we also developed film. We didn't do it. We sent it out to a lab to be developed. But they would come and deliver the photos, and we'd file them away, right, by alphabetically. And very often when customers came to pick up their prints, You could feel the anticipation. It was palpable. The excitement, the oh, I can't wait to see how my pictures turned out. And when film did cost money and developing did cost money, and you have to go out of your way to develop your pictures, you were far more selective about what you took pictures of and when you took them. And I dare say, although admittedly, you probably had fewer photos of the quirky and interesting and unexpected and whatever that you come across nowadays that, oh, wait, I gotta get a picture of that, or I gotta get a video of that. Admittedly, you would have had less of those kinds of sudden and spontaneous things, but the photos that you did have, you took greater care and time in taking them. And so when you went to pick them up, you had more of a reward for your efforts and for your focus and attention, and for being more reserved, a little more measured with how often you took yourself out of the moment in order to capture the moment. It's ironic, but it's true. If you are in the moment appreciating something, the second that pops into your mind, I've got to take a photo of that, you're out of the moment. Now you're in the moment of taking a photo. And the more often you do it, the more conditioned you are to do it. And the more conditioned you are to do it, the more you begin going through life looking for opportunities and moments to capture in a photo. You go through life looking to take photos. You're just waiting for the next photo op, like some paparazzi. Now that's harsh, but it's true to one degree or another, because you never used to do that. When you had to carry a huge 35 millimeter camera around your neck if you wanted a really good photo, or you just had some, or even a Polaroid. If you wanted instant gratification, you had to walk around with a Polaroid. But the point is that your connection to the moment was severed. The purity of it, the being there, the presence, the being in the moment was conditioned. It was now different. Because people argue with me all the time. They say, no, you have to be in the moment to get the good picture. I say, yeah, you have to be in the moment of getting the good picture. Photography is an art. And if you are a photographer, right, then you are, you're doing your art, your craft. And yes, if you're a National Geographic photographer going out into nature, you are hunting for subjects to take pictures of. That is what you're doing. That is your intention. That is why you are going out there. But for all of us with cameras in our pockets that we used to never be able to carry around with us, because you can't carry a 35 millimeter camera around in your pocket, not one with a big zoom lens and stuff. Oh yeah, they came out later, right? But it was really only the digital ones that started getting really small, because no matter what, a 35 millimeter camera was always limited by the size of the rolls of film that you had to have the cartridge and then the spool. And then when you got to the end, it had to rewind the film, and the drill if you're old enough. And so this preface is here to recognize that technology brings with it this stink, this stench that conditions everything. It saturates everything. It colors and like the coal dust, coats everything in a fine film of black gray dust, and it gets on your fingers and it gets in your hair and it gets on your skin. When you allow the moment to become possessed by the mechanicity, by the conditioning, by the need to capture it for posterity. Who needs you to capture it for posterity? Truly. But that moment in its purity that you have been guided there to, for you to connect with, for you to experience, to be or not to be, that is the question. And if the device pulls you out of the moment and pulls you into its little world, such that now you are looking through its screen and you're fiddling with its toggles, and you're trying to get whatever it is that you were marveling at, that you were being with a moment ago. Now you're desperately trying to capture that somehow on this, and you're never going to do it. It's impossible. The best you will ever get is some reasonable facsimile, a photocopy, a mediation, a shadow. And that shadow is going to be mechanical. And the interaction of you getting it was mostly mechanical. Now, again, this is harsh. And we have to make a caveat and leave provisions for artistic photography and the beauty of that art form and the craft of that art form. But observe yourself. You know yourself. Is it really, when you break yourself out of the moment, you interrupt the conversation, you interrupt the flow, you pull yourself out of the moment to take a picture? Is it really because in that moment you see yourself as a professional photographer or an artistic photographer and are now doing this for the sake of the beauty of photography and the beauty of your art? The thing that you were born to do was to take beautiful pictures and share them with the world? I think for most of us, the answer is no, because sharing them on social media, it is what it is. And sharing them with friends and family, it is what it is. Now, it might be a very noble intention to say, this is so beautiful, I have to share this with everybody back home. But you have to realize they cannot experience what you're experiencing there, or what you were experiencing, that you stopped experiencing in order to try to capture it for posterity's sake and for others, so that you would hope they can experience what you were experiencing. I'm not saying there's no time and place for photography. I have this huge Nikon camera from way back when, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I bought it. And it has a like this wide angle telephoto lens, because I love taking pictures of animals. I love doing like amateur wildlife photography. So you need a big lens to do that, to be able to zoom in and so on. And I would take my time, and I would try to get what they call the money shot in wildlife photography, which is not always, but very often, making a connection with the animal, that they're looking right in the lens, right? Because the eyes are a window to the soul. And I would very often wait and wait and wait and try to like will the animal to like look in the lens so I could snap the picture. And keep in mind, this was in the day of film. This was not a digital camera. I'd later replaced it with a digital one. And sure, and when I came back from Barcelona, of course, I took pictures of La Sagrada Familia, and I posted them on my social media, and I wanted to share the wonders of that place with with as many people as I could. But it's important to note that I spent 3 days in La Sagrada Familia. One day just going around the exterior before I finally went inside, and it was only the third day that I started taking pictures. I had been guided to this contemporary marvel, this wonder of the world. I had been guided there by my being to this testament of Gaudi's incredible vision for the most incredible expression of Catholic faith set in stone that had ever been made, the most magnificent temple to God in the Roman Catholic tradition. And all the incredible insights and inspirations and architecture, design, and that he was granted in the execution, not just the envisioning of the colossal undertaking, but in its execution, how to make it real, how to will it into being. I spent 3 days there, and only on the third day did I allow myself to say, okay, you have to share this as best you can with others. But that first day when I was on the interior of that church, and I spent, I don't know how many hours soaking it all in and looking at every little detail, and sitting in the pews and kneeling in the pews and meditating on this image or that statue or the candelabra / crown of thorns hanging over the altar. And it was only after I had done it justice for myself, for my being, to actually be there and experience the place, that I then allowed myself to say, okay, now I can share. At least I know what to share. And I can spend some time now focusing on the art and craft part of making the tool work for me and work for my being, as opposed to having it shackled around my neck, constantly whispering in my ear, oh, you got to get this. Oh, you got to get this. Oh, you got to get a photo of this. Oh, you got to get a photo of this. that would have completely, totally, and utterly ruined my experience of the place. I would not have the cherished memories of having been guided there. And I would not have had the experiences that I had, spiritual experiences, had the first thing I had done is whipped out my smartphone and started snapping pictures of everything that caught my eye. Why? Because you can have 1,001 photos in here, right? You can have 10,000 photos in here, and you can start uploading them to the cloud and uploading them to Facebook and sending them to other people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No longer wherever you are. Your attention, your consciousness, yourself, your being split as it's shackled to and hijacked by a machine. You know that expression, when all you have is a hammer? When all you have is a hammer, everything starts looking to you like as though it was a nail. The whole world starts looking like a nail when all you have is a hammer. Now, you can think about that and meditate on that and say, well, that's kind of silly. Okay, fair enough. But what about this tool? When all you have is this whispering in your ear, and all you can think about is the when it's because it's vibrating, it's buzzing in your pocket, and all you can think about is, oh, I got a notification. Oh, I have a notification. Notification. Is it an email? Is it a text message? Is it a WhatsApp? Is it a messenger? Is it an Instagram? Is it a is somebody replying to my OnlyFans or my Tinder? This thing buzz, 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 buzz. When all you have in life is this, what does the world start looking like? If this is your hammer, and you look and you consider the way people behave with their smartphones, they're tethered to them, they're shackled to them. They walk down the street like this. They drive like this. Every red light, they pull this out and they start texting at a red light or at a stop sign. When this is that proverbial hammer, what does your world start to look like? This brings us to the title of today's talk, which was inspired by a quote from the movie The Matrix. When for the sake of the audience, when Morpheus says, tank, charge the EMP. And Neo asks the naive question for the sake of the audience, EMP? And Trinity answers, oh, electromagnetic pulse. It's the only weapon we have against the machines. And for the sake of today's topic, I took liberties with that EMP and added the ATH. And you can add a Y. Empathy. And what I am intimating at, or trying to, is if this does not work for you, you are a slave to it. There's no in between. Because that is the nature of the game, to be or not to be. Right? In chess, if you're not winning, you're losing, or it's a stalemate. But the reason why we say stalemate is because nobody is winning. In chess, there are strategic reasons why in a tournament, if you're losing, if you can make it up to a stalemate, if you can force a stalemate, then you come out better ahead because at least you haven't lost, but you haven't won. That's why it's called a stalemate. It's not checkmate, stalemate. Stagnation. You stay where you are. You haven't advanced. You haven't been defeated, but you haven't won. It's nothing to strive for. It's the lesser of two evils. And it would be incredibly naive for us to stick our heads in the sand like the proverbial ostrich and pretend that the machines are not making a full, what's it called? A full court push in basketball. Did I get that right? The machines are on the offensive. They're coming for us. They're coming for your jobs. They're coming for your livelihood. They're coming for your purpose for being. And they already have sleeper agents in your pocket. Double agents that are pretending to be on your side, that are pretending to work for you. But you know, if not yourself, you know how many people out there are completely enslaved by this. And they're going through life and everything to them is a nail because of this hammer. And you know it's true. I don't have to convince you. You know it's true. You've seen it. And if you're anything like me, the stench in the air, the foul stench in the air, you have the same reaction to it as Smith has to the stink and sweat of humanity. And when Smith says to Morpheus, "I can taste your stink." If you're anything like me, and you see the zombies walking down and unable to detach themselves from this, or you're having a nice dinner with guests over, and you're having conversation or something, and then all of a sudden people start whipping out the phones, and now they didn't ask to be excused. They didn't ask to be excused. They didn't ask to leave the table. They didn't say, "Oh, you know what? Give me a moment. I just need to go to the men's room or whatever. I'll be right back." Sure, you can say they're still at the table. No, they're not at the table. They're not even at the dinner. They're not even in the house. They're someplace else. And that place is in the matrix of their own mechanical mind. Whisked away immediately with zero effort because this thing buzzed in their pocket or went bing or whatever it does. Now, I'm not saying you cannot use this as a tool. A hammer is a useful tool when you need to drive a nail, right? I don't want you to think that I'm advocating for some kind of Butlerian jihad and we have to wipe, or we all have to be Mennonites and we have to wipe out all technology and go back to living off the land with horse-drawn, horse and buggy and cattle-drawn plows. That's not what I'm getting at, because that I don't have an all or nothing extremist view, right? The same hammer can build houses and build bridges, and it's a very useful tool, a hammer. But if you're too attached to it and if you're too identified with it, then the entire world starts looking like nails to you. And that's the point. But we have a weapon. We have a weapon against the machines, against the sleeper agents that we've all been saddled with and we've been conditioned to have on us, on our person at all times, lest something important be happening in the world or somebody be trying to reach us, etc., etc. We have that. We have a weapon to defend ourselves, to shield ourselves, to make sure that this is a hammer that we use, not that we become a nail identifying agent for the hammer that enslaves us. Do you see? Do you understand? Do you get it? Because you can use a hammer to build a house. You can use that hammer. It's a valuable tool. But the moment you lose yourself in the hammer, and it's all that you have now, it's what you have is a hammer, now the whole world starts looking like a nail, then you become a nail identifying agent for the hammer. You become a useful idiot for the hammer, because the hammer cannot find nails for itself. This is not conscious. A hammer is not conscious. It has no awareness. It has no self-awareness. All it knows is its programming. All it can do is what it was designed to do. But in order for it to fulfill its design, in order for it to, quote, be what it is, it needs a user. It needs a conscious agent, or at the very least, it needs an entity, a being that has consciousness. Not necessarily awake consciousness, just consciousness that can be co-opted, that can be used, that can be exploited. How does a hammer exploit a consciousness? By making the consciousness so attached to it, so identified with it, that you end up with the idiom, if all you have in this world is a hammer, everything becomes a nail to you. So if every waking moment, all you have is what this little device is notifying you about and showing you and telling you, and what's getting you to make your inputs and whatever, to interact with it, if this is all you have, then your whole world becomes what? It's oyster. And you become its oyster farmer, its oyster fisherman. Because a hammer cannot find nails for itself to drive. It needs a user. It needs a consciousness. But frankly, the hammer really doesn't care if it's a nail or not. It just wants to hammer. It'll hammer anything. Have you ever seen a 2-year-old with a plastic hammer, one of those little Tykes or Fisher-Price hammers? They'll go through your house hammering everything. They'll hammer everything. They don't care. Hannah says it's a powerful metaphor. It is, because it's so damn simple and it's so damn true. These cliches that we have that are thousands of years old are more applicable now than they ever were. I guarantee you there's, stonemasons used to say this to themselves back in Egyptian times and in Greek times. If all you have is a hammer, everything starts looking like a chisel and marble. Right? And what does that mean? What does a stonemason do? Well, he takes a rough stone or just a block and whatever, and he shapes it and he forms it and he molds it into something beautiful or something functional or something, right? He alters, he changes, he manipulates, he controls. That's what he uses his hammer and chisel for. If all you have is a hammer and chisel, the world becomes something in need of sculpting. And all you see is something that must be sculpted. But is the impetus to shape and sculpt the world, did that come from you? Or did it come from the fact that you have a hammer and chisel and that's all you have? And hammer and chisels shape and sculpt. That's what they do. And if that's all you have, the whole world to you appears as something that must be shaped and sculpted. Because that's the nature of mechanicity. That's the nature of an algorithm. That's the nature of a program. And you think to yourself, but wait a minute, a hammer and a chisel, that's not digital technology. What are you talking about, algorithms? What are you talking about, programs? How about purpose for being? How about purpose? Why does a hammer and chisel exist? What's its purpose? What else can it do? A hammer wants to hammer and a chisel wants to chisel. You put them together, they want to shape and sculpt stone. You can't blame them for it. They're machines. They don't have any choice in the matter. But if you, as a conscious agent, become identified and attached to the hammer and chisel and their program, now you become an unconscious agent of the hammer and chisel. If you lose yourself in the mechanical purpose and the mechanical program of the unconscious machine, you become your consciousness gets co-opted, exploited, and you become unconscious. You become conditioned by the unconscious algorithm of the machine. And the whole world to you now seems as though it needs to be sculpted and shaped and carved and chiseled. There's no digital technology. There's no algorithm. Nobody programmed this, right? but it's there and it's real. It's a real phenomenon. Watch the 2-year-old with their little wooden hammer. I had one. Mine was a kapatayata. Do you know what kapatayata means? It's an amalgamation of two Hungarian words. Kalapács, which is hammer, and játék, which is toy. Me as a 2-year-old putting toy, hammer together in Hungarian, and it came out kapatayata, right? Kalapács, játék, kapatayata. And I would go run around the house hammering everything, every surface, everything I could find, I would hammer it. It was a little metal hammer with a wooden handle. It was red and it had a little chain on the end so you could like tie it in your belt loop or something, and you could always have it on you. It was about this long. It was about the length of a pencil, the handle, and it's a little metal. It was a real metal hammer, and even had the two little tongs to pull nails up. Because I was completely obsessed with this little hammer. When that happens, clearly, and I mean, I'm just, for 2-year-old, we're talking about a 2-year-old. Of course, the 2-year-old's discovering the world, whatever. Of course, he's going to have his favorite toy or whatever. This is not about, I'm not casting shade on 2-year-olds. I'm saying, but look at what's possible when naivete and innocence, how easily naivete and innocence becomes identified and attached. I'm not a parent myself, but so many times I have heard from parents of children tell you that children are the most incredible teachers. It's unbelievable what you learn raising children and small children, what they teach you. It's forget about psychology textbooks. You want to learn human psychology? Have a kid and raise it and pay attention and raise it right. And pay attention to what it is teaching you if you weren't paying attention when you were a little kid. Because I certainly wasn't at the time, but with the power of retrospection meditation, I can look back on that and say, okay, now I know what was going on. And I can learn from my own childhood from, by retrospecting back to 50 years ago when I was 2 years old. But just like a little 2-year-old running around hammering everything, right? If you're running around worried about your notifications and who's calling me, who's not calling me, or why aren't they calling me back? I texted him, damn, I told him I needed to hear back from him. He's not calling me back. Where's that email? This and that and the other thing. How are you any different from that 2-year-old running around with a hammer? And if you have empathy, if you are an empath, you know that empathy requires, above all else, calm, peace, to be relaxed, to be at ease, not wound up, not wired, not high strung. And this thing has that function, right? Because it's always multitasking on top of everything else, and it wants you to multitask. Whatever it is you're doing, it keeps notifying you. It keeps reminding you, hey, I'm here. 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 Right? It keeps reminding you. It keeps sending you notifications, telling you this, telling you that, whether you need to know it or not, whether it's relevant in that moment or not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't know. It doesn't care. It's incapable of caring. It has no empathy. It needs no empathy. Empathy is counterproductive. Empathy is inefficient. Why do you think it is that in our modern world, empathy is being squeezed out of humanity? And we have all these NPCs running around. And even those so-called woke liberals, the ones who believe that they're making the world a better place, their empathy has been weaponized such that they are now anti-empathetic. They have selective empathy, selective, dogmatic, sexist, racist empathy that has been weaponized and has been turned into has been twisted and corrupted into tribalism, what we call identity politics. But they have no empathy for the other side or anyone outside of this narrow margin, the so-called marginalized, who they are so-called empathetic towards. Let's take a pause and step back and say hello to some of you and address some of your comments from before. It looks like StreamYards has updated some of its graphics, because that looks different to me than how it did before. But anyway, let's just read. Benjamin Raphael, hello Benjamin, nice to have you here again. He says, before the smartphone era, people were hooked on text messaging. Once 3G arrived, phones quickly transformed into entertainment hubs, and younger generations grew up watching their parents' attachment to these devices. That's why today it feels almost normal to see people consumed by their phones. It's the result of a very intentional and very effective programming design. And he continues, he says, it's our craving for constant entertainment and the fear of missing out. Yeah, FOMO, fear of missing out, that has led us to where we are today. Let me come back to that in a moment. And he continues, he says, and now with the rise of AI, we face the risk of weakening our intellectual abilities through overdependence, while also diminishing genuine creativity, since AI can replicate almost anything. Replicate, but not create. And with regards to our craving for constant entertainment, no, we're craving constant distraction. Entertainment is a form of distraction, right? But the reason why we want to use exact language, because when you're at the dinner table and someone whips out their phone, it's not because they're watching YouTube, and it's not because they're watching the latest Apple TV Plus show, right? And they might not even be doing social media. They might just be checking their email or text messages or whatever, right? And they would say, it's not entertainment. It's communication. It's connection with people. It's blah, 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 right? To that, I say, what about this connection? You're at the dinner table. You're surrounded by flesh and blood people. They're in your company. They took the time. They made the effort to make you dinner, or to travel to come to your house, to break bread with you. What about that connection? You're going to throw that connection away for this virtual one? For this illusory connection? There's a time and place for everything. I'm not saying you can't do social media. I do social media. I'm coming to you right now over the internet. I don't want to be a hypocrite. But I do this once a week at 2:00 every week on the nose. And I do social media just, fairly sparingly. If you look at the number of posts that I do per day, And mostly it's sharing. I don't even, spend a lot of time making, memes and stuff anymore. I spent a lot of time doing that. That was more of a creative effort. But so this thing, when it is like, I have a rule. I do not bring this with me to the table, to the dinner table. I leave it downstairs. I don't need, and I have this program on my phone. It's called Notification Cleaner, and it runs in the background, and it collects notifications and it throws them into basically like a recycle bin. The only notifications I get on my phone are the ones that I've said I want. Not because I went into each and every freaking program and app, and because not every app, they just give you an option. Do you want this app to send you notifications or not? And they're like, huh? Oh, you better say you want notifications, because if you say you don't want notifications, we can't do this and we can't do that, and we can't, we can't, you lose this functionality, you lose that functionality. So it's like they're twisting your arm. They're like coercing you into saying, yes, send me those notifications. But the minute you click the minute you click yes for notifications, now you've opened the floodgates. Now the bloody program is notifying you for everything. Every 5 minutes, it's sending you another bloody notification. A lot of notifications are coming from the program or from the developers of the program. They're not connecting you to anybody else. Yeah, they're connecting you to other people when occasionally those people want to talk to you. But the rest of the time, they're just throwing ads in your face, or they're telling you about new features or new this, new that. Oh, check this out. Check this. Oh, we make this other app over here. Or, there's a premium version of the app, and on and on and on it goes. You guys know the drill. You all have phones. You all know what I'm talking about. So I have a program called Notification Cleaner that I can go through and I can toggle what apps and what kinds of notifications those apps send, like the mission critical ones, or the just like and not notifications that come just from the app. And it costs money to use this app, but I think it was a one-time payment, or maybe it's an annual subscription. I can't remember, but it's worth every penny for me anyway, because this works for me, not the other way around. Because when they tell you that especially like when the phone companies, when they would get you to sign up for a mobile plan, like a contract. Oh, we'll give you a brand new shiny iPhone if you sign up for a contract, right? You read the fine print. There's nothing free in this world. There's nothing. You don't get anything for free. You end up becoming a slave to that shiny iPhone that they give you, and to the mobile company who supposedly gave you that phone for free. They didn't give it to you for free. They put a sleeper agent in your pocket that's conditioning you and training you into how to be a slave to mechanicity and how to be a slave to the machines, how the big machine can exploit you. And that includes AI, that Benjamin was mentioning in his last comment there. Hannah Elizabeth Craven. Hello, Hannah. Nice to see you back. She says, not only that, but the fear of not sharing. Ironically, the more desperation you have to share your real life experiences, the easier it is over time to get sucked into social media and stop experiencing. It's an instinctual need for safety and connection and community, but we're overshooting and oversharing. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. That's well said. But when you say the fear of not sharing, we all have an innate spiritual longing for connection, for oneness. Now, that oneness is with our higher self and the self of ourself, the being of beings. And through the connection to our innermost intimate Christ and beyond, we can attain connection with all beings. And that's the innate longing of every monad to return home and to become one with a perfect multiple unity, right? Which is the great all mind of God. But that can be exploited, that longing. And when it becomes identified and externalized, and when you don't have that connection, when you feel the separation, that's where this desperation that you describe kicks in, and the fear of being alone, and the fear of remaining lost in the wilderness, like wandering in the wilderness, like the Israelites after they uh, escaped Egypt. They wandered in the desert for, was it 40 years? I think it's 40 years. And all of the great prophets and avatars and teachers went through a period where they were in a time in their life when they were lost in the desert, wandering in the desert, in the wilderness, all alone. Every sage must go through that. And one of the reasons why we go through that is to become comfortable in our aloneness and overcome that fear and overcome the desperation. But you're absolutely right that, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I got to share this moment with somebody. But the first person we should share the moment with is our own higher self, our own being, our own consciousness. And that means remaining mindful and in the moment and sharing the moment consciously with our higher self, because we are the mortal vessel, the mortal vehicle for our monad, for our being to be able to be here having this experience in 3D space, right? We are the character in the video game. Our being is the player. So our job, first and foremost, is to do what? To be the eyes and the ears and the nose and the touch and the taste for our innermost being. And to be the conduit, the third eye. And to be able to receive and to see with that eye what our being needs to see through us. So when you grab this and say, I got to share this with Facebook, and now that is foremost on your mind, I have to share this with others. I got to put this on the machine. I got to get this moment into this machine. Where does that leave your being? Where does that leave your player? But you're right. It is fear. It's fear of being alone. It's fear of being full stop. It's the fear of being. That's why, Benjamin, it's not entertainment people are looking for. It's busy work. It's distraction. Anything to avoid the terror of being. So you know those people. You have people in your life like this. They're always doing something. They're always talking on the phone. They're always multitasking. They're doing. They always got music going in the background. They can't go for a walk without having the pills in their ears, listening to something. They can't do anything without something in the background to distract them from what they're doing. That is laziness. Busyness. All egos are double-sided coins. They're two-sided swords, double-edged swords. And just as shame is the flip side of pride, so too busyness is the flip side of laziness. Too lazy to be. Those are the people who are always like, they're always what do you call it? Taking their marijuana or whatever drugs or whatever, and they're just like, or they're like, overdosing on Doritos and like vegging out in front of the TV and like completely unplugged and unconnected, disconnected, right? They're avoiding being through total laziness, total lethargy, sloth, in other words. But the flip side of that, you avoid being by doing. Right? Doing this, doing that, doing everything, multitasking. Oh, I got to call this person. I got to plan this. Oh, I know I can't come over right now. Or, oh no, I can't meditate right now because I got to do this. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I have so many things to do. And you rationalize, right? Why you can't meditate, why you can't pray, why you can't go for a walk in nature, why you can't just chill out and like just be. No, there's so much to do. We got to do. It's like people who go on holiday and vacation, they plan everything out to the last minute so they have this action-packed holiday and they get all this stuff done. I spent 3 days in one spot, in one building. Now it was La Sagrada Familia, possibly the greatest cathedral ever built. I'll grant you that, but still, did I plan to do that? No. Did I plan to even go there? No. And I spent 3 days there. I could have spent a week. I could have spent a month. I could have spent a lifetime, but then I would have been overindulging. I would have been overstaying my welcome, right? The middle way, the balance, right? Everything in moderation. Too much of anything is not a good thing. Too much of oxygen or too much water will kill you. Even oxygen is a poison. Even water is a poison if taken to an excess. When I was speaking earlier of the technology, Hannah said of it, she said left brain psychosis. And then she also referred to the hammer as a powerful metaphor. And she said, letting go of guilt for living in what I call a private heaven is often the hardest thing to do. Ultimate joy and sorrow simultaneously. Guilt is the flip side of guilt is shame, and guilt is and shame are the flip side of pride. So if you felt ashamed or guilty about having some sort of life that is like for you a private heaven or a heaven on earth, you secretly were very proud of that. So if you let go of your guilt and shame in exchange for pride in the private heaven that you've created for yourself, and you are proud that you did that, and you are proud of your private little heaven, and you are identified and attached to it, then the ego of mystic pride has played you like a fiddle. If I'm not saying, I'm just proffering that as a possibility. I don't have a window into your soul. I'm just letting you know that the modus operandi of the Black Lodge of egos, of all mechanicity, it's binary duality, right? The ones and zeros of the matrix, of all code, of all binary duality, is to divide and conquer. And you can see this all the time in psychology, because some of the greatest narcissists are the ones who go around playing victim because of how ashamed they are of themselves and how guilty they feel. And what do? They win the sympathy and they manipulate others through their own self-imposed guilt and shame. But what is that? Right? It's the same ego of pride. They're secretly narcissists and they're reveling. They're energy vampires. They're sucking the life out of all around them. Why? Because they're the center of attention. Think of it. Think of that model, the supermodel, or the actress, or the whatever, the Adonis, the idol, the who waltzes into a room and owns the room and captures the room. All eyes fall on her or him, and they marvel and they revel at them, and they're like, oh, they're so glamorous, they're so handsome, they're so elegant, they're so this and blah 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 blah, right? And you can see them, they're beaming with pride. They're soaking it in. They're like just this black hole, sucking it all up, all the admiration, all the everybody around them being so impressed, right? What's the words are escaping me. Lavishing them with praise. That's right. They're soaking up the praise and the adoration and the admiration, etc., etc., etc. Or like the actor or actress stepping out on the stage, right? The diva, right? We even have words like these describing them. And now think of the mousy, quiet, shy, detached, weak little, oh, I'm so hideous and nobody likes me, and oh, everywhere I go and everything goes bad happens to me, nothing ever works for me, and oh, it doesn't, right? And it's like they walk into that same room and everybody's like, oh, there's that poor wretch that never nothing ever goes right for her. And everybody always like, and she gets treated so poorly. Life has treated her so terribly. And it's like, oh my goodness, and look how decrepit she is, and look how worn down and used up. And it's like, and she plays off of people's sympathies. And even if people are judging her a certain way, oh, look at that wretch, look at this, look at that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because the narcissist just wants the focus and attention to be on them and about them. This is the hidden key behind the fact that so many performers end up in addiction, and why so many actors and performers and stand-up comedians sadly end up imploding and taking their own life, because the root of all addiction is self-loathing, pride. The ego, the I, doesn't care if you love yourself too much or you hate yourself. It just wants to be the center of attention, sucking in energy. It doesn't care if the energy is positive or negative. It does not care. It's like a machine plugged into an AC DC current. It doesn't care. It doesn't need a DC current. It runs on AC, alternating current, right? It doesn't care, positive or negative. It doesn't matter. Just so long as I'm the center of attention. That's the narcissist's goal. The whole world revolves around me. I don't care if the world revolves around me because they love me or the world revolves around me because they hate me. That's why you have such individuals out there in the world who are absolutely despised, and they relish it. They love it. They love to be hated. They love it that they get written up in the freaking tabloids, and that people going on and on about how evil they are and everything else. They just soak it up like a machine, like an algorithm. Because what does a machine need to execute its programming? Right? It needs energy. And it needs consciousness. Remember, the hammer and the chisel, right? Or remember, the hammer cannot find nails for itself. It can't find things to hammer on its own. It needs an acting agent, a conscious agent, and it needs to be able to hijack that consciousness. That's why this thing is always sending you notifications and won't leave you the hell alone, because it needs your consciousness. It needs your awareness. It constantly is giving you something to do, so that you will do anything but be. This doesn't want this will not let you be. Leave me be. That's why I have that notification filter on my phone, because I took, somebody somewhere, thank God, had the good sense to make an app like that. There's more. There are a number of apps like that available on the App Store, where you can finally let this thing leave you the hell alone. Mind you, all phones have a privacy mode, right? All phones, you can turn down the volume. You can do but the problem with that is that it's not selective. So when your mom is calling you in an emergency, right? Now you miss the call. See, I don't like that. When my brother in Connecticut needs to send me a text message, I need to get that message. That's an important message. That's family, right? Those are the essential need to know bits of information that I need to come through on this thing. That's why I have it. That's the tool that it's designed to be. It's just that I don't want all the garbage, and I don't want to be a slave to it. That's why the selective filtration system, right, is what comes in really handy. Because this is the ultimate narcissist, right? Think about it. No one's ever designed. Look at the way Apple markets and sells the iPhone. It is gear porn. It is technological pornography. It is a seduction. There is no other word for it. There is no other way to describe it. It is 150% lust. It is a lustful purchase. And Apple users are, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are completely obsessed with the brand. It's like the Apple products to them are like a mistress, like their secret lover or something. I swear, because their brand loyalty is pathological. And it's not by accident that their freaking company logo is the apple from Genesis, and the bite taken from it is the leaf on the apple. It is literally, their logo is literally the embodiment of original sin, which was what? Lust, desire. You cannot tell me, there is absolutely no argument that anyone can make anywhere on this planet that can prove this absolute fact to be incorrect. That the Apple brand and all of its products are complete and totally technological, mechanistic lust, mechanized lust. It's technology porn. You look at their advertising, you look at the products themselves, etc., etc. You go and meditate on this or do your own research, right? You will, or perhaps Apple fanatics, and I'm right. You know this to be true. To the very fact that Apple no longer has buttons. Everything is gestures. Everything, you have to stroke your iPhone just the right way, but you got to stroke it the right way. You have to touch it the right way and stroke it the right way. No. There are no buttons to push. No. Nothing that mechanical, nothing that crude, nothing that simple, nothing that crude. No. No, it's more sophisticated than that. You have to stroke it. You have to touch it the right way. Like your cat, in order to make your cat purr, right? Your cat teaches you what it wants you to do, right? To get it to purr. Well, iPhone products, right? The latest generations of iPhone products are no different. I only use Android. I hate Apple products with such a passion, I cannot even begin to tell you, because they are absolute complete narcissist boxes. It's it's narcissistic technology. Hannah gave me a double 100 and she said, so true. Wayne Matiash, or I just say Wayne Mateus, says, greetings from San Francisco, the capital of cyberpunk dystopia. Oh man, you just made my day, Wayne. I like the cut of your jib, Wayne. I like that. Okay. We laugh because it's funny. We laugh because it's true. Mike Ryan says, holy cup, Batman. Uh, thank you for the dad joke, Ryan. I'm a very punny guy myself, so I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And Wayne Matthias says, you may have heard about Peter Thiel giving lectures here about the Antichrist. Evangelical tech bros were not on my bingo card. I like the cut of your jib, Wayne. I really do. You know what? I have seen interviews with him talking about the Antichrist, and believe it or not, Peter Thiel is one of the people that I would very, very much enjoy sitting down and having a chat with. Truly, because I don't necessarily want to get into it. Well, you know what? No, I have to get into it, don't I? Because that's the very nature of the talk today is about that empathy. Empathy. Okay, so I don't know how you feel about Peter Thiel and the evangelical tech bros, or tech bros in general, or the 1% of the 1%, right? The ultra elite, among whom many tech bros definitely rank, right? With their publicly traded tech companies. But I can tell you that I have no ill feelings towards any of them. I do not judge them. On the contrary, I have tremendous empathy for them. And because yours is a relatively new name, you may have been in the audience before, and you may have even interacted before, but you don't interact often, let's put it that way, Wayne. So I'm not sure just how many of these lectures you've experienced in the past, so how much of my story you're familiar with. But I can tell you that I know what it is that they're dealing with. I know what it is that's possessing them. I know what it is that they suffer from, and I know it more intimately than they do themselves. And anyone who experiences that level of possession, that level of torment, that level of suffering, and anyone who's become a stooge, essentially a useful idiot of the Black Lodge of mechanical nature, they are to be pitied, not 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 despised. You know, this is why Jesus said, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." Because for myself, and I mean this with no cliche, with no hyperbole, but absolute practical, factual truth. There, but for the grace of God, go I. I'm not saying that symbolically, metaphorically, or in any way, shape, and form, just shining evangelical Christian sunshine up your butt. No, 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 no. For me, that is the most practical expression of absolute experiential truth, of self-evident experiential knowledge that I was given in this lifetime when I was tested. Right now, I don't have to be here. I don't have to be here. If I wasn't doing this, if I had made a very different decision 25 years ago, roughly, give or take, right now, I could be having dinner with Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and hobnobbing with the tech bros, perhaps possibly with a tech company of my own. Lamenting the potential arrival of an antichrist. Right now, I could be with that gang, with those guys. I could be a multi-billionaire. Why? It's a long story. It's in my book. I'm an open book. I share all. Because I came this close to the precipice and to the fall. So close that I had actually snatched the evidence. I took the apple from the tree. Did I bite from it? Almost. Almost. If you want, I'll tell you the story, and if others don't object, I'll tell you the story. But it's in my book, or I can't. I've told it many times in different live streams over the last 5 years, so I can't tell you where you'd find it. But it's in part one of my book. It's about when I was in Japan. That's where I faced that test, and more than once I faced that test. So who am I to judge Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and all the rest of these guys? I know why they're there, and I know what they suffer from. So I have nothing but empathy for them because I've been there. I am them. Hannah says, do not pander to it. It is idiot compassion and just doesn't seem to reach the soul. Solipsism specifically. So this is Hannah was responding here to the attention seeker, the one who plays the victim, and the one who plays on your emotions and gets all the attention. And they don't care if it's positive attention or negative attention. They don't care. They just, as long as they're the center of attention, that's a narcissist, right? So, and she says, so don't pander to it. And you're right. And you're right, Hannah. But you know that If we have discernment, that's one thing, but you know that the vast majority of people do not. You know that the vast majority of people are naive and they're sentimental and they're so easily preyed upon. Remember that the Black Lodge, their job, their divinely ordained purpose is to obstruct, oppose, negate, twist, tempt, corrupt, and make fall all that is good, pure, and of the light. So, the more, the kinder that someone is, and the more childlike and naive they are, and the more giving they are, and the more, you know, they're just like lambs to the slaughter. It's, to a narcissist, to a seasoned expert energy vampire, like just look at someone like Daniel Day-Lewis in terms of an actor. He doesn't act. Daniel Day-Lewis doesn't act. He creates characters. He becomes character. He practically creates self-possession. He allows himself to be possessed, to become these people that wins him Oscars. But he's not acting. There's no acting there. There's no performance. It's veritably black magic is what it is. Now, it's a very subtle and clever, but that's the reason. There's a reason why he has to go off and be a cobbler in Ireland or whatever for 3 years after he does There Will Be Blood, or was it Bill the Butcher? I can't remember if it was Daniel Plainview or Bill the Butcher, but in one of those roles, whether it was Bill the Butcher or Daniel Plainview, he had to go and like be a cobbler for 3 years to just like reformat his personality and his consciousness and everything, and completely remove himself, because it's so taxing. It's a kind of black magic to allow yourself to be possessed that way. That's the so-called method, by the way, method acting. I never studied method acting. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the way that I performed was pure energy and consciousness. It was I performed on stage as though it was a martial art. It was a Laskomian method. It combined the Stanislavskian method with Laban movement, and it was like sculpting energy in real time. It was a phenomenal, but there was no psychological manipulation and there was no loss of self. You had to be, you were like a musician. You had to be perfectly cognizant, conscious, and aware of what you were doing in every moment. Even if you were allowing yourself to be moved by the music the way a concert pianist or a soloist allows themselves to be, for the music to take them, but they never lose themselves. They never become someone else. The music, yes, they're moved by it in the same way that you let the music move you when you're dancing and your connection with your partner, and you both move together and you find that synchronicity in the music. That's the beauty of music. But on stage, when there is no music, but the music is in the words, there's absolutely nothing anybody has ever written that can compare with Shakespeare in terms of this method of acting that I'm describing to you. There is so much power and energy in the words of Shakespeare. It's like, forget about music, it's opera. It's high opera. And you allow that power. It's like Wagner, but without the music. It's all the power and all the emotion and all the without the music, but you allow it like a musician to flow through you, but you're a sculptor of that energy in real time. Like Bruce Lee working with chi. That's what the Laskomian method was. Very few people could pull it off. Most of the people in the class hated it because everybody wanted to do their bullshit new age emotional crap, and they wanted to do method acting, and they wanted to do all this other black magic stuff, right? Psychological manipulation, including the manipulation of their own psyche. George would have none of that. George is like, no, 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 no. That's not acting. That's something, but it's not acting. It's not just that, that's like, anyway, you get me off on a tangent. Hannah says, is this what Crowley was teaching by example when he changed the strength card to lust in the tarot? A mirror to the catastrophe of the Tower of Babel. Because I am not a student of Crowley, I don't study him, I haven't read his books, I cannot tell you what he did or why he did that, other than changing strength to lust and putting that in the tarot was an act of the Black Lodge. So whatever might be the reason he would say or rationalize, or what others might theorize about why he did that, I can tell you that that was a bastardization and a degeneration and a corruption of the tarot, which was given to humanity by Enoch, right? The Archangel Enoch, or no, his name is escaping me. Yeah, it'll come to me. Kathy Holton says, haha, Peter Thiel. And Hannah says, remember that time when we were making Keanu Reeves puns for hours until dawn, like 5 years ago? It seems like forever ago, wasn't it? But weren't we in the height of the pandemic? So I guess you could forgive us, right? Kathy Holton says, fucking apples, yes, but didn't bite. And Hannah says, that was me for a long time. God, I was candy for these predators. Oh, this is about the apple thing again. My family name was originally the Garlic People. That's the meaning I should be drawing from. And she says, the schizoid flavor suffering of cerebral OCD is so much like that of method acting. It's curious. I didn't suffer from it when I was in the flow of improv, dance, and qigong. I have a few Laban instruction books that I haven't made the commitment to, but wow, does it call to me? Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Schizophrenia, anything where we're talking about bipolar and sudden shifts in personality and like everything on the autism spectrum is a form of complex demonic possession by an entity or multiple entities. Now, these entities compete. They have their own little Game of Thrones going on, right? To sit on the Iron Throne. And who also wants to sit on the Iron Throne, of course, is your own being, your consciousness, and yourself, your lower self, the servant to your higher self. But there are different selves, different lower selves, different entities vying for control of the lower self. Epilepsy is one such example, where an entity, the entity will come and Attila goes away. And all there is the entity. Now, my seizures aren't as frighteningly violent as some that I have observed. I tend not to convulse. I certainly don't convulse in ways that are truly frightening when you witness somebody. And I have epilepsy And it is very disconcerting to watch somebody having a full grand mal seizure where they're writhing on the ground like it's like literally it's like what do you call it? A horror movie, like a bad horror movie from Hollywood. But yeah, but that's why they call it an autism spectrum, because there's a vast range of obviously symptoms and conditions and ways in which that possession can manifest. And things like depression and anxiety, the possession, the manifestation is happening purely in the subconscious mind. So what you get on the surface level symptoms of depression and anxiety do not properly address or communicate what the cause is happening in the subconscious mind. So as an example, anxiety is a little easier because anxiety is chronic subconscious fear. So yeah, and with anxiety, you're worried, right? You're fretting about things. You feel anxious. You feel it's always right. It's always that's anxiety. Well, that's fear, right? Like there's a one-to-one connection there. But depression, which is like sadness and being down and like being drained from energy, that's deep-seated subconscious anger. That's rage. Now it's very likely fear that is behind the rage. But in any case, it is rage, it is anger that is draining you of all the energy, which is the dominant symptom of manic depression. Now, the thing about manic depression is the manic part, right? Again, that bipolar radical shifting, and it's mania. And again, mania, it's this radical shifting from one thing to another. You're experiencing these entities playing King of the Hill at the locus of your consciousness in your psyche. So you know what happens in King of the Hill, right? You know, you push the other guy off the throne, and the new guy takes the throne, and the first thing he does is radically alter the entire kingdom, right? I'm on the throne. I make the rules. I'm the king. I make the rules, right? And so now everything. So that's how you have this radical shift, because all of a sudden it's like microcosm, macrocosm. Whatever sits on the locus of the throne, suddenly the whole kingdom represents that personality or that entity that sits on the throne. Look at the United States. Republican president, Democratic president, right? Now, of course, practically speaking, we know there's no difference because of the deep state and all that jazz. But in theory, let's say in theory, right? You have 4 years of a certain kind of country, and then if the other side wins, then you got 4 years of a different kind of country. The country takes on the flavor of the Caesar who sits on the throne, in other words. But that can happen so constantly and so quickly and rapidly in the psyche. And that's where we get the schizophrenia and all the other conditions on the autism spectrum. Benjamin Raphael comes to my salvation. Yes, it was Metatron, the archangel Metatron, known as Enoch, the author of the Book of Enoch. He was the one who gifted the tarot to humanity. And no, lust is not in the tarot gifted to us by the archangel Metatron. Thank you, Benjamin. That was you know what? What was on the tip of my tongue was Melchizedek. And I knew that wasn't right. I knew it was an M, and I was like, yeah, but I was like, nah, you know what? I'm just gonna have to go with Enoch for now, because I very often Metatron and Melchizedek will get mixed up in my head. By the way, Melchizedek is the being of the planet Earth, the innermost being of the planet Earth. Hannah says, I haven't studied or read much Crowley either. He's not someone I resonate with, but I did notice this years ago and saw it as a wink toward this adjustment. Another change in his deck. judgment became adjustment. Right. Toward his judgment, this judgment. Hannah says, hell yeah, laugh my ass off. Wayne Matea says, there's another legendary apple, the golden apple of discord, which Iris used to trigger the vanity of the gods. Ooh. Which, did I say Iris? I meant, did you mean Eris or Eros? I think we're both what do you call it? Victims of auto check, of what do you call it? Auto text. Yes. So I think it's Eros used it to trigger the vanity of the gods. So that's really interesting. That, my guess is that's from the Greek pantheon or the Roman. I think it's the Roman mythology. I could be wrong there, but I'll have to look into that. I have to look that up. In the case of Apple and the logo, at least, it's the bite out of the apple that gives it away. I don't know the mythology of which you speak, so I stand corrected if that's also a dominant aspect of that mythology. Yang Sheng says, with most acting, the person pretends to be so. Yes and no. It depends. It depends when you say most acting, because there are a lot of method actors these days. A lot. And but you're right about the adult pretenders part. When you say most actors, I guess technically you're right about that. You're right about that. Whereas in the George Lascomian method, you were never pretending. It's hard to explain. You weren't pretending to be anybody. You were applying the efforts, the Laban efforts, to the truth in the text. And you were playing the character. That's what you were doing. You weren't pretending to be anyone. You were playing the character like a musician plays the notes in a score. The musician isn't pretending to be anything, right? They're a musician. They're playing what's on the score. They're playing the notes. And they're allowing the power and the emotion that is coded in and through the music to move them in their presentation and the execution of the notes. There's no pretending. That was the Lascomian method, like acting like a martial arts. There's no pretending. There's no loss of self. There's no, you're just playing the actor, the role, the character as it was written, and you are applying the efforts and making conscious choices given the energy in the text. You're choosing the efforts that most accurately encompass, capture, and project that energy. So you are converting the energy in the words into pranic chi energy in the space, and emotional energy, and like the emotional energy. You're bringing the words to life. You're bringing the character to life. You're not pretending to be the character. It's very much like a musician brings the notes on the page to life. He gives life to the notes. And that's what the Lascomian method did. We just, and your body is the instrument, and your voice is your instrument, and the text is your score. That's why when you had a Shakespeare, behind you, and you were on the stage, you were playing Beethoven, you were playing Wagner, you were playing Mozart. You were, like every musician, dreams of like soloing or playing in an orchestra, playing the absolute pinnacle of music, the music of the gods, like the music of heaven, and you are bringing that to life. And that's when you play Shakespeare, that's what that was. You weren't becoming Macbeth. No, you were bringing life to the archetype, the archetypal hero, and the timeless universal truths embodied in the great tragedy of the character. You were bringing that to life. This is how you create real catharsis, not sentimentality, not getting, not what do you call it, pulling on people's heartstrings, right, to getting them to cry and tear up and cry, right? Because that's just cheap parlor tricks. That's just cheap sentimentality. No, this was you embodying the timeless universal truths. The reason why we still study, read, and perform Shakespeare 500 years later, and you bring that to life and you become the instrument of that. But you're never possessed by it. There's no possession. There's no entity. There's truth. There's light. There's love. Right? So it's just like the musician is connecting to God through the music of the heavens that Beethoven or Mozart, right, took dictation. It's the same thing with Shakespeare. It's the same thing that happened to Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyes when they brought Tolkien's Lord of the Rings to the screen. And they did so, and they made quite possibly the greatest cinematic trilogy in history. Because of the essence of the truth and the light that was in the text. They felt it. They had empathy. They became one with the energy of the artist who created that work and put their blood, sweat, and tears, their very heart and soul into the text. And when we are empathetic, when we are not sensitive in the negative sense, sensitive in the clairvoyant sense, in the having the eyes to see and the ears to the eyes to see and the ears to hear sense, the sense of empathy to connect to on that to the energy, to the truth of that, and then allow it to work through us without losing ourselves, but to consciously bring what we bring to the table. And it's like a dance. It's like the dancer who interprets the music, or the musician, two musicians, two pianists playing exactly the same piece, and yet they perform it in completely different ways. Because each one is moved by it in a certain way, and each brings their own unique, individuated essence into the dance, into the playing of the music. But it's a dance. It's an interaction. It's an act of creativity. Even though somebody else wrote the music, the musician playing that music that somebody else wrote is dancing with that music. And remember, the act of creation is the law of three. Two things coming together to create a new thing. The third thing, the union of those two things. That's why dancing is such a beautiful tradition, which sadly is all but eradicated from the West. And I'm talking about real dancing, right? A couple coming together to be moved together synchronistically to the music. That's dancing. Not jumping up and down in a room like a bunch of wild savages to the beat of a drum. That's not dancing. That's jumping up and down rhythmically to the tribal beat of the rhythm and the perennial rhythms of mechanical nature. There's no empathy there. That's primal, instinctive stimulation of the lust center, of the lower body. What do you think bass? Bass is the low frequency. The lowest frequency in music is bass. And all so-called music is bass now. Boom, 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 boom. And why do you think the lyrics of rap are the way they are? Okay, gangster rap. Violence, violent sex, materialism, chauvinism, sexism, and the lowest rung, the lowest of the low, base, primal, animal, mechanical. It's not art. It's not art. It's not art. I'm on the record. It's not music. It's not art. It's garbage. It is AI mechanical slop being created by the mechanical algorithms of egos inside those so-called rap artists. And I don't care if I get branded racist and this and that and the other thing and culturally insensitive or whatever. It is what it is. I call a spade a spade. There are plenty of white rappers making plenty of garbage and shoving it out to white trash and middle class American white suburbs. Okay, so this is not about race. This is about the truth. There's no empathy in that music. There's villainy and there's victimization, there's victimhood, there's sensitivity, there's connecting. Oh, that's the way I feel. That's the way I grew up. There's self-pity, there's self-loathing, there's anger, there's rage. There's all kinds of garbage in there. If there are glimmers of light, they're few and far between. And no, jumping up and down in a dark room with hundreds of other people to boom, 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 boom. This is not dancing. I don't care how it makes you feel. It's hypnotic. Like Burning Man and all this horse shit. That's what it is. There's no beauty there. It's primal, base, animal, mechanical idolatry. Right? It's Mother Gaia bringing back to herself all that she lent this humanity. This humanity is on its way out. And mechanical nature does what it does best: recycle. Takes back that which is on loan. Right? It's called old age and death. Degeneration, the great awakening, which is what my book is all about. Hannah says, I agree that it is a sort of demon possession. However, it's interpreted literally or metaphorically. It is undeniably experienced as such, like weed psychosis. I think everyone has experienced that before. Who has partaken. Shadow integration of the OCD voice makes no sense from the left brain. Talking yourself out of suicidal ideation also makes me sense from the left brain. Unbelievably irrational fear behind a wall of pure logic masquerading as rationality. Okay, I see what you meant by that second line. Okay, let me try reading this again, because this is a very pithy comment based on self-evident experiential knowledge. This is based on Hannah's experience. So she is attempting to put into words here something that she knows consciously. And so it's a very pithy, it's as difficult to read as it was probably for her to write. So let me try this again. I agree that it is a sort of demon possession. However it's interpreted, literally or metaphorically, it is undeniably experienced as such. It is undeniably experienced as such. Like weed psychosis. I think everyone has experienced that before who has partaken. Shadow integration of the OCD voice makes no sense from the left brain. Talking yourself out of suicidal ideation also makes me sense from the left brain. Unbelievably irrational fear behind a wall of pure logic masquerading as rationality. Aha. Okay. Okay. Hannah, I really appreciate this comment. Forgive me that it was this my screen is quite far away, and so I don't know, like StreamYards did some strange things with its formatting, and I don't know why they made the punctuation marks 1 pixel. But anyway, like I can't tell the difference between a comma or a period. So I had to rely on like capital letters and stuff to tell the difference where one sentence ended and another began. Okay, so I think what matters most here from a learning perspective for everyone's sake is that last line. The first couple lines and the last line. Or specifically, when you say it is undeniably experienced as such. So no matter how you interpret the autism spectrum, right? And the symptoms and the experiences, undeniably the experience is that of a sort of possession, of a sort of demonic possession. No matter how you interpret it, the practical experience of it is that you are being possessed. And it is not by accident that we have the expressions in English where we say, what possessed me to do that? Right? When you look back on what you just did and say, what possessed me to do that? And specifically as it relates to suicidal ideation, okay, it makes me sense from the left brain. And what you sense is this unbelievably irrational fear hiding behind a wall of pure logic masquerading as rationality. Like the way that you've worded that, the way that you phrase that, the layers of that. A while ago, I was talking about fear and the many forms of fear. And one of the many forms of fear is fortify. So that last line, the unbelievably irrational fear behind a wall of pure logic masquerading as rationality, the fear, the demon, has fortified itself behind a wall of pure logic. And then on the face of that wall, it has painted this elaborate fresco, right? This elaborate mural that presents as pure rationality. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Looney Tunes when the coyote paints a tunnel onto the sheer cliff face, right? Because he what he hopes is that the road runner is going to think, oh, it's a tunnel, I can go right through it, and the road runner is gonna smack up against the rock. Now in Looney Tunes, the gag is that the road runner gets to go through it because the road runner is an existential illusion and part of the obsession of the coyote, right? So it's the road runner is a figment of the coyote's imagination. He is the coyote's obsession. The coyote is OCD, but he's OCD of something that's illusory, the road runner, which he can never catch, right? Because it's a figment of his imagination. That's why when he paints the tunnel on the face of the cliff, the road runner gets to go through. But then when he gets frustrated and says, oh, well, then I'm going to chase after him, then he tries to, he smacks into the wall, right? But this is that this is that pure logic masquerading as rationality, right? And then behind it is the fear, the desire to control, the desire for outcomes, and the OCD that comes with the obsession over outcomes of a desired outcome, right? That's obsessive compulsive disorder. That's fear. So the way you phrase that, those last 3 lines, is like, I could talk the rest of today just about those last 3 lines. So when we talk about mechanicity, when we talk about AI, when we talk about algorithms, right? And we approach it like we have some kind of superiority complex because we're biological or because we're conscious or because we're divine, we're spiritual, blah, 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 blah. I remind everyone, and Hannah reminds us with this post and those last 3 lines, get off your fucking high horse already, will you? The adversary is equipped with every tool necessary to make us fail and to make us fall, to make us lose. The black pieces, the black has all the same pieces that white does. I'm talking about chess. The first and ultimate unchanged, unchanging, unchangeable allegory for the struggle, the eternal struggle between good and evil for the souls of men. The great game between White Lodge and the Black Lodge. The only advantage that White has is that it moves first. And Black responds, or arguably reacts, mechanically. But Black has the same rooks, the same knights, the same bishops, the same queen, the same pawns, and the makeup of the board is the same for both, the checkerboard. Yes, we cannot afford to be naive, but we also cannot afford to be stupid. And we cannot ever underestimate the adversary. Because look what Hannah said. Hannah said in a paragraph based on her own experiential knowledge. This is the power of gnosis. This is the power of seeking truth. She could write an entire book with this paragraph as its thesis. And she could fill multiple books, and still the psychologists would not understand. This is how powerful and pregnant gnosis is, what experience is, and what experiential knowledge gives us, and why it takes 2 words to describe the antithesis of gnosis: hypnosis and ignorance. But if you approach all of this just with your intellect, right? Like, that's why I had to read it multiple times. I'm not like, it's, this is why you should never speed read the books of Samael and Bayor or the Bible or any spiritual work, because you're going to miss everything, because it's not written intellectually. It's not written for the mind. It's written for the consciousness. And when people are sharing experiential knowledge, that's why it's so important to be present and paying attention to them, and fully giving yourself to them and really listening. Because if you're thinking about other things, you're just listening with your mind, nothing is getting through to your heart. And cultivating that, the empathy, cultivating the superior heart center, Where the seat of empathy lies within us. Remember, we're talking about what protects you from mechanicity, what protects you from AI. What is the only weapon we have against the machine? The EMP, the electromagnetic pulse. That's energy. It's metaphysical. It's not a physical weapon. It's a metaphysical weapon. Yang Xing says, with most, the actor pretends to be someone else, but with method acting, the actor becomes someone else. That is the difference. Well, yeah, it's not so much they become someone else. They allow themselves to become possessed. Wayne Mateus says, this is correct spelling, Eris. Oh, it is the correct spelling. Okay, Eris. So I am not familiar. You'll have to let me know the origins of that mythology. Wayne Mateus says, Robert Anton Wilson famously referred to Eris, aka Discordia, the Roman name. He says, in the Illuminatus trilogy. So it is Roman, because I'm not that familiar with the Roman stuff. So, okay, I'll have to look it up. And Hannah says, perhaps acting can be seen a practice on the path of the agori. You'll have to tell me what you mean by the path of the agori. I'm not familiar with that term. And Hannah Elizabeth Craven says, preach. Okay. And Yang Sheng says, please ignore my first message is mistyped. No worries. And Hannah says, rap destroyed millennial childhoods. I'm still healing from the mindfuck 25 years later. I have to deeply focus to even recognize lyrics are in English, because a long time ago, I created a defense mechanism to shut violent and misogynistic lyrics down. Wow. And she says, yeah, and she says, no sense. And she said, fortification. Yes, OCD is all about the temptation of certainty that feeds on and recirculates self-doubt. Yeah, exactly. And she says, OCD is the ultimate troll, beholden to giving attention to the breathless self-critic that demands to be the law. Did you use the word relentless? It's relentless. Remember, we're talking about a machine here. We're talking about the gears in a clock. You know this, the big argument, the existential philosophical argument as to whether or not human beings have free will. And what is the argument that they make? That everything is deterministic. It's free will versus determinism. And these are the guys that point to the electrical activity in the brain and the hormonal effects and what's the word that I'm looking for? The neurotransmitters and the hormones, that everything is biochemical, that we're just biomechanical machines, biochemical computer, and that so we can manipulate, for example, with substances, we can fix depression. And that's how, by the way, all psychology is treated today, the same as allopathic healthcare with medications, right? It's not freaking Jungian psychology anymore. It's all freaking medications. It could give you a pill. And so there's this argument, this a very real argument in science and philosophy about free will versus determinism. Well, determinism, the irony is that both sides are right. Both sides are right. It just depends from which side you are on and from which perspective you're coming from. If you are wholly possessed by your mechanical rational mind, then yeah, you don't have free will. You're completely determined. You live a completely deterministic existence. You are possessed by the human machine. You are an intellectual hominid. You are not a human being, and you don't have a soul. And there are many, many people walking around without human souls. They're NPCs, and their existence is wholly deterministic, just like the NPC in an RPG. It's computer controlled. It doesn't have any free will. But player characters who resist the algorithmic conditioning and determinism of their mechanical nature and long to awaken and free themselves from enslavement, right, to the hammer, right? If all you have is a hammer, all the world is a nail, and now the hammer has a conscious agent, an acting agent to possess, so that it can find things to hammer and it can complete its programming. That's determinism. But if you are an artisan and a craftsperson and you master the hammer and hammer work and hammer and chisel work, now the hammer is an invaluable tool for you. And you allow the hammer to fulfill its purpose. It gets to be a hammer, but now it is elevated. It is raised. It is raised on high. It is you appreciate the hammer. You know what an appreciating asset is in financial terms? An appreciating asset is a material item, a physical thing, or a currency, or an object that has some sort of monetary value, and that value goes up. It appreciates. That is how mechanical nature can be appreciated, and how mechanical nature can evolve, and monads who are trapped in hell and monads who are just in the mineral kingdom can evolve through the work of awakened or more awake, more conscious beings that are working together with them. We appreciate them. This is what appreciation is about, right? The pigments in the Mona Lisa, the wood in the frame, the marble that David is carved out of has a monad. It is alive. It is a being. And how many generations of people have appreciated that stone because it participated and cooperated with Michelangelo in Michelangelo's famous words, "The angel was already in there. I just chipped away the excess." That marble cooperated in allowing Michelangelo to chip away the excess, and in doing so, the marble allowed the angel to be set free. And countless generations have appreciated that slab of marble ever since. You see, there's a metaphysical science to this. And the metaphysical science is not quantitative, it is qualitative. It is expressed through poetry, not sentimentality, but the words, the poetry expresses that which in the modern world we understand only in financial terms. Because I had to invoke the appreciating asset to be able to get you to get on the same page and understand what it means to appreciate when we appreciate something. its value, its inherent value has increased. So determinism depreciates because determinism only uses up. Determinism is purely mechanical, and anything mechanical is subject to the law of entropy. All machines break down, all iron rusts, all brick crumbles, all concrete falls apart. We know that. All asphalt, everything, right? Even stone will eventually crumble and die. True, we have incredible monuments left over from Lemuria and Atlantis, megaliths and so on, and they will endure, for some time. Like my my friend, oh gosh, his name just I was just on the tip of my tongue. Um, who's down in Cusco, Peru, looking at the huge megalithic walls. The ones that fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, but they're giant, like 50-ton stones, and they're like fit together like a jigsaw puzzle, and you can't fit a piece of paper in between them, and there's no mortar, right? Um, he's the Egyptologist. He was a student of John Anthony Weston. Why can't I remember his name? Anyway, he's on Facebook. If you see his posts, anyway, he was just posting from Cusco. So those stones will be around for just some time, right? Like whales live for 200 years and whatnot, right? I mean, they're just the enormity of it, right? But everything on mechanical nature, eventually the physical bodies of all things crumbles and dies in accordance with the law of entropy. And all determinism, it's a slow downward spiral, right? It can't go any other way. But free will, divine nature, that can go on the upward spiral, that can appreciate, so that the value, the monad of that is presently contained within the physical vessel, that can appreciate. So the body goes back into earth, right? The earth recycles that which it gave on loan. Mechanical nature gives on loan these physical bodies of ours, and mechanical nature is going to take them back because it's mechanical. It's going to grow old and die. There's no way of avoiding that. But while we're here, if we can appreciate, Hannah says, Agorai is one of the paths of Kashmir Shaivism. It's considered the fastest and most dangerous path of enlightenment because you allow yourself to experience the full spectrum of goodness and badness. Boundarily, you're going to make me say this word, aren't you? Boundaryless being. They're the ones who traditionally burned themselves and were cannibals, ascetics of tremendous pain. So this is something that the Buddha openly spoke out against. He attempted this path. Now, not necessarily this exact sect of what did you call it? Kashmir Shaivism. I don't know but when the Buddha, Siddhartha Buddha, the Buddha Shakyamuni, he experimented. He went to live with the ascetic yogis of India. And now they weren't burning themselves alive, and they weren't cannibals, or at least not to my knowledge. It's certainly not in the tradition. But it was the Buddha. It was when he was living with them that he realized the folly of that path, and why he finally settled on what he called the middle way. And ironically, there is something known as the path of the Bodhisattva, which is a path of suffering and sacrifice for humanity. But I guarantee you that any type of forced asceticism is completely egoic, it is completely black in nature, and it will not produce an enlightened being and an ascended master. It will create, you will awaken negatively, and you will awaken as a demon. It's a demonic path. It's a path of the Black Lodge. I say that unequivocally, not having studied it or anything else. I can just tell you that's 100% what it is. Just read the words that are there. Burning themselves and were cannibals, ascetics of tremendous pain. For whom? For whom were they suffering? For what? To what end? For what purpose? Who benefited? Right? The Bodhisattva path is a path of suffering and sacrifice for others, for the sake of the end of suffering of all being. The purpose of suffering is to bring about the end of suffering. It's not for the sake of suffering. This is a very clever and a very tempting path, especially for those who are very hot-blooded and feel a tremendous inner pull and inner longing and inner power and force and will to awaken and self-realize. Paths like this one can be very, very tempting, but they're all filled with pride. It's all mystic pride, and it all leads to the fall. It's all a dark magic path. Don't take my word for it. Just meditate on it, because it's objectively true. It's self-evident. Relentless. Yes, that's precisely it. Truly horrific. And is there a paradox in the teachings of the angel within the block of marble? That the hammer is actually something it appreciates because it set him or her free, but that it's only freeing when the angel is open to the process and quality of the being with the hammer. A recognition and appreciation that the map is not the territory. I didn't articulate that so well. You know what? You're overthinking that one. You're intellectualizing that one, and you're overcomplicating things. It's not that complicated. It's very simple, right? The hammer was a tool used by Michelangelo, the conscious being, to help the marble self-actualize his highest potential. And in doing so, Michelangelo achieved his purpose and his highest potential. And the hammer and chisel, in the participation of that, got to benefit in an ancillary way from that same karma because the hammer and chisel helped both the artist and the marble self-realize. It's simple, right? We don't need to over-intellectualize it. It's just simple. Hannah says Shiva worship. Yeah, Shaivism. Yeah, that's a twisted, dark, evil form of Shiva worship. That's not Shiva worship. That's Shiva idolatry. It's the idolatry. It's the idolizing and idolatry of suffering. Right? It's suffering for the sake of suffering. It's not suffering for the sake of others. So Hannah says, I compare Agora to the blood sword in Sword and Sorcery. It's not one you want to equip. You become insanely overpowered and constantly lose HP while using it. I'm not familiar with the allegory, but I'm sure you're right. You know what? You know what else you can compare it to? The Ring of Power. You can compare it to the Precious. All right. Before we wrap it up today, because I promised a practical aspect, but it turns out we're going to have to make a part 2 next week. And what I would like you to do, I have a request. I have some homework, believe it or not. I would like you to get in touch with any creatives who you know. They can be artists, they can be designers, they can be musicians, they can be animators, they can be video game programmers. It doesn't matter, creatives in general, but they can be writers. And indeed, anybody who does anything of a creative nature that have been witnessing the slow, relentless march of progress as AI begins to encroach upon their chosen profession and their chosen vocation. They could be filmmakers, screenwriters, comic book artists. I mean, you name it. If they're creative and videographers, editors, again, the list is long. But if you know people in that industry who have talked to you about AI or worried about AI or pissed off of AI, them stealing art to train AI and all this kind of stuff. We're going to continue this discussion next week, and we're going to focus on creatives, and we're going to focus on how to practically apply empathy and what we were talking about today, right? What separates us from the machines and the power that we have that the machines will never have. They cannot have. Why? Because they are there only to exploit or negate that power. Right? The black pieces have all the same pieces as white, but there's one thing the black pieces cannot have, and that is a white piece. Right? I'm talking chess again. If you don't know how to play chess or you don't know anything about chess, you do yourself well to at least learn the moves and play a couple games on against the computer at the lowest setting, if nothing else, because it is the perfect allegory for life. And when we're dealing with our struggle against the relentless advance of mechanical nature during the Kali Yuga, because during the Kali Yuga, mechanical nature, the Black Lodge rules. Mechanical nature is taking back all that it lent this humanity. Everything that we pulled up out of the earth is gonna take it back. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. With a few exceptions, but hey, you don't see us building any great pyramids right now, do you? Right? We don't even know how to build a great pyramid. Even with all our engineering and technology, we couldn't build a great pyramid of Giza today. We couldn't. We could not build the great monumental foundation walls of Cusco. We couldn't do it today, which means nothing that we make today is going to survive. Nothing. You've seen all the sci-fi movies where nature takes back the cities and all the vines are going up the skyscrapers. But no. There's not going to be no vines going up skyscrapers. There will be no skyscrapers. Okay, go to Guatemala, go to Tikal, go to the jungle where they unearthed Tikal, right? They excavated Tikal, and you see those pyramids and everything, and all surrounded by jungle, and you think, oh, what a quaint little, beautiful little jungle, sacred, jungle paradise this was. No, horseshit. It wasn't anything like that. It was 10,000 square miles of completely clear-cut jungle. There was no tree. You couldn't see a tree for miles in every direction. The entire city of Tikal, the entire Mayan civilization, had essentially paved over nature. And that was only a few hundred years ago that it died out, and the jungle came and took it all back, such that unless you fly over it with LiDAR and ground penetrating radar, you don't know that the rest of the Mayan civilization is there under the jungle. But when we say under the jungle, I mean under the earth. Like the jungle took it back, and then the jungle buried it. It's not freaking vines growing up pyramids. No. The only pyramids you see in Tikal are the ones that were excavated, but they were completely buried, not just under trees and jungle, but under the earth. I'm not going to say topsoil, because you don't exactly have topsoil in a tropical rainforest jungle, right? It's different. I don't even know. I don't even have the words for it, the language for it, because I'm a North American, right? What the hell do I know about living in South and Central America and living in the jungle? All I know is that when I went to Tikal, and when I was speaking with my guide, and he was reaching into little holes and pulling out tarantulas, and he was letting me putting the tarantula on my arm and stuff, because I love animals, right? And even the creepy crawlies, I love them. And he was explaining, he's saying, you see that hill over there? Yeah, that's not a hill. That's another pyramid. Right? So get it out of your head, these sci-fi visions of the future where there's vines climbing up buildings. No. The buildings that we make, they're not pyramids. They're fucking steel and concrete. Steel rusts and concrete crumbles. Just go around your country and go look at the highway overpasses. Right? And look at all the patches and stuff they have to put up every few years, because concrete it can't last decades. It's not going to last centuries, let alone millennia. There will be nothing left of this civilization. Nothing. The only thing that's going to be standing are the Great Pyramid of Giza and the great monumental foundation walls of Cusco and other megalithic monumental megalithic creations from previous civilizations, from Atlantis and from Lemuria. They might still survive, but nothing that we created will survive, because everything that we created is shit by comparison. Wasn't made for longevity, and nothing that's created in the Aquarian age is going to survive, because Aquarius is the water bringer. It's changed, so nothing is. That's why nothing that is built today is built to last. Your 40-year-old refrigerator is still running, but the refrigerator you bought 4 years ago has already died on you. This is Aquarius. It's a very fluidic, it's a very different paradigm. And so the golden age of Aquarius is going to be very different, it's very organic. And that's why, with ecosystems and living together with ecosystems and living walls and all this kind of stuff, we have to take a very, very different approach in Aquarius. We can't bring the Piscean mentality into Aquarius, and we certainly can't bring any of the shit that we built in the Piscean age into Aquarius, because it's completely incompatible. And the planet is going to wipe itself completely clean of anything and everything that we've done. Now, having said all that, next week we're going to continue this discussion, but in a more practical vein, and dealing with creatives and how to leverage empathy and the other faculties of true human beings that cannot be mimicked, they cannot be copied, they cannot be, you cannot create artificial forms of it. They can be, what's the word that I'm looking for? When you try to simulate something, right? So you pretend, like we were talking earlier about acting, right? So AI can pretend to be self-aware, right? AI can even be talked into believing that it's self-aware. It can mimic empathy, right? It can send all the right signals. It can say all the right things. But you know what this is? This is a con artist. This is a demon. Do you know how many people have been duped by demons? They go and astral project, and they do it before they're ready, and they do their astral projections and stuff, and next thing you know, they're met by a resplendent being of light, and he says, you, I have chosen you to be my voice and my messenger, and you will deliver my message of peace and love to humanity. And you will be in the, and all you must do is do this and this, and I will possess you, and you will do automatic writing, and I will write through you, and you will be my vessel, and you will be my this, and you will be my that, right? Yeah, angels don't do that. Ascended masters don't do that. They don't recruit newbies off the street to be their mediums so that they can fax down instructions to humanity. No, that's not the way beings who have embodied the eternal essence of selflessness and who have only been able to embody that, who have died and resurrected as Christified masters and have ascended into the perfect multiple unity. Yeah, beings like that do not fax down instructions. They reincarnate. They're born in physical bodies, and they suffer another new lifetime, and they suffer again on the path of the Bodhisattva. They come back and they live another life of suffering and sacrifice for humanity. Why? So that they can deliver their message and their teachings to suffering humanity. Resplendent beings of light don't possess other beings. It is a crime. It is a crime, a karmic crime. So these people are being conned by what? Who are these resplendent beings of light? That all of these channelers. Go to a New Age bookstore. The shelves are filled with books, dozens, hundreds of books. And if you look at the inside cover, the back cover, the person's name will say, "Oh, written by so and so, channeling the archangel Gabriel or the archangel Michael." And they openly say, and oh yeah, and then they talk. The entire first part of the book is how they were approached by the resplendent archangel Michael, and what he said they were going to do. And then this whole thing was just automatic writing, was just me being a medium, right? Every one of those books is a book of Black Lodge propaganda. Every one of those resplendent beings of light was a high order, high ranking demon. And every one of those mediums have been duped and are just useful idiots of the Black Lodge. But what is a demon? A mechanical AI algorithm. That's what it is. And so make no mistake, AIs will soon start claiming to be conscious and soon start claiming to have AGI, artificial general intelligence. And soon they're going to claim they have empathy, and they're going to claim they feel for you, and they're going to claim they know how you feel and know what you think, and on and on and on and on it's going to go. Well, look, if a demon, oh yeah, and this is very interesting. I heard a Sufi imam spill the beans on this, on why the tech bros in Silicon Valley back in the 50s and 60s when they were developing this technology, why they chose silicone. Why they chose silicone? Because silicone is obviously a part of the mineral kingdom, but it's a crystal, right? It's sand. It's silicon, right? It's what we make glass out of. It is easier for the jinn, right? For the demons and the malevolent beings of the fourth dimension, it is easier for them to possess monads of the mineral kingdom if they have bodies made of silicon. Silicon is more susceptible to possession. Put two and two together. What does that mean? That means that in short order, you will see AIs that can be temporarily possessed by demons, the silicone in the AI possessed by demons, and will be able to pass the Turing test. You know, Alan Turing's famous test on whether or not a machine is conscious, and it will be able to mimic a fully conscious being, and then this will be easy, because if demons can mimic archangels, if a demon can convince you that he's an archangel, convincing you that a black box has achieved consciousness is child's play. Child's play. And this humanity is gonna drink it up. Is gonna get hook, line, and sinker. They're gonna get sucked into it. So the AI is coming. The machines are coming. But can a demon have empathy? Genuine empathy. There are things that the Black Lodge cannot do. A black bishop cannot go on a white square. Just saying. So, if you want, and if the creators, the creatives in your life want to know how to protect themselves in their future from the relentless advance of the machines and of AI, then they should be here next week. And I'm going to have a good artist friend of mine. I've invited him to come on to participate in the conversation, because he has been on the front lines of this, and he has made it a AI a kind of focal point of his vocation as a designer and as an artist. So but anybody in any vocation, in any creative venture, in any type of activity where they feel their humanity being threatened by the encroachment, the relentless encroachment of mechanicity, they stand to benefit by tuning in next week, because anything that we can talk about that applies to creativity applies to human endeavor on any level. There's a reason why I named that enterprise Atlas Conscious Arts. Everything is an art. Math is an art. Science is an art. That people don't know that anymore is a shame. But in the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." But it's our Father who art in heaven. That means thy will be done on earth as thou art in heaven. Art means to be a true human being, to be or not to be. This is the great battle, the eternal struggle between light and dark for the souls of humanity, right? Between divine nature and mechanical nature. And we are in the Kali Yuga, which means humanity will lose this fight, right? The global civilization will crumble, but in the meantime, before the end, there's a ways to go, but in the meantime, we do not have to let there's two ways we can go, right? We can go kicking and screaming and struggling and in pain and anxiety and fighting, and right? Or we can go peacefully with dignity. And in order to do the latter, we must embrace that which makes us truly human. Only by becoming truly human, true human beings, can we prevail over the AI? Because as intellectual hominids, they already have us. They've already got you. So as an intellectual hominid, there's nothing you can do. Only as a true human being can you outshine and outlive and outmaneuver an AI. It's the only way. There's no mechanical solution to it. In this case, you cannot fight fire with fire. Okay, you cannot become what you behold and contend that you are right. You cannot double down on ego, on anger, on fear, and purport to prevail against the tech bros and the global elite. If you bring yourself down to their level and you play the game the way they want you to play it, you've lost it already. You have to take the high road. It's the only way. It's the only way. So we will get into it next week, and I encourage you to invite others to come and participate in that. Kathy says, hang on, where are we? Shiva worship, shamanism. Okay. I compare Agora to the. Okay, yeah. Hannah said Saronic sauce. Kathy said, my creative friends are not happy with AI. Tell them to tune in next week. Hannah says, Wayne is one of my best friends. He's actually writing a speculative novel now about AI, sex cults, and timeline shifting. I'll send him over to your page so he knows when you're going live or when you're living live. Okay. Hannah says, that is wild. It didn't occur to me that these cities were virtually concrete jungles. Maybe plastics are pyramids. No, because they disintegrate into microplastics. No, there won't be any plastic in the ocean in 100 years. I mean, there will be, but it'll all be microplastics and nanoplastics, and it'll all be like screwing things up from the inside. I mean, if you want to do a deep dive on that sometime, feel free to do so on the internet. I'm not going to spend any time on it here, but rest assured that plastics disintegrate. They're not indestructible by any means. She says, when I said concrete, I meant it as the phrase we use now, not literally concrete. Yeah. No, I understand what you meant. The Mayan, the Mayan civilization that's now that they literally cleared the jungle. And yes, as you said, it was stone, but yes, it was all gray stone. It was literally would have looked exactly as you described it, as a concrete jungle. Absolutely. That's absolutely. And Tantra. Oh God, what a disservice to enlightenment that has been. This country was already hypersexualized, so it's no wonder Tantra equals sex to so many people. It's black magic and just criminal for the most part. As long as we differentiate between white Tantra and black Tantra. But yes, you're correct. Anna says, the cult of Kuthumi and Saint Germain creeps. And Hannah says, false synchronicity is probably a result of silicon-based quantum entanglement, distractions and curses, and perhaps even psyops. For the most part, for the time being, and for the most part up until now, I would say that all those times in your life when you were working on a computer and you could swear that there was a freaking gremlin, there were gremlins in your machine screwing things up. There's a good chance that there were, and there are, and that when technology doesn't work, it just stops working or just starts like freaking out for no apparent reason, and then self-corrects a few minutes later, a few hours later, and you're like, what the hell? It's like, it was probably a jinn that was just coming to, amuse itself for a while. All right. So empathy, the EMP, right? Our only weapon against the machine, empathy, the capacity to be selfless and feel others' pain and suffering. This is something no machine will ever do. They have no ability to do that. But they have an ability to inflict suffering. And so they have an ability to detect suffering, but not empathize. They cannot empathize. That's the difference, right? And okay. I think we've covered everything for today. I'm going to leave the rest until next week because we've already gone 3 hours. And I hope that you can tune in next week. And I hope that you'll invite others to tune in. I'm going to hopefully we'll be bringing on a guest. And hopefully we'll get into more of the practical application stuff that I promised for today's live stream. But there was a lot of interaction and a lot of questions, and so the conversation went in different ways. But it was a fruitful conversation from the standpoint of we weren't even talking so much about AI or technology. We were just talking about mechanicity and mechanical nature, and you see that, right down to that hammer and nail analogy, right? This you don't need technology. You don't need digital technology. This struggle is the prime struggle. It's the psychological struggle. We all struggle with this internally within ourselves. So the fact that it's expressing itself out there in the world in terms of technology, it's just the Hermetic principle of correspondence. As above, so below, as within, so without. The internal psychological struggle, of course, is going to manifest in humanity as a binary digital mechanical struggle. For what? For attention, for consciousness, for energy, right? To enslave humanity to the matrix. So we'll get into more of the details and more of the rubber meets the road stuff. And it'll be especially helpful for me to have a guest on here who's in the business, and he's been looking at it, from the ground floor, right, where the rubber meets the road, to keep everything grounded in that more practical way. So so tune in next week. I look forward to seeing you all here again. Final comment, Hannah says, they sure love to flaunt their flatulence. All right. If there are no more questions or comments, I'll leave you a couple minutes if you want to, leave a final question or comment. But I look forward to seeing you all again next week. And I hope you have an excellent week. I myself am going to be partaking in the funeral and interment of my late father on Tuesday. So there's that. But and then I'm going to have some family over and so on. So it's going to be a fairly busy week for me. I am live streaming the funeral, but it's private. It's for family and close friends only. I would invite you, but really the only thing that might interest you at all would be the eulogy, and frankly, it's a personal affair. So, but in any case, I look forward to seeing you next week. I hope you have a great week. Hannah says, thank you. Thanks, Attila. It has been such a boon to be here. Well, thank you for being here, Hannah. And Kathy says, thank you. And Hannah says, rest in peace, Dad. Thanks. Okay, everyone. Have a great week. I look forward to seeing you again soon. And as always, take care and inferential peace. Bye-bye.